Hello, guys. David Vose here. Boy, oh boy, it's a beautiful day, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. It really is. There's so many things that I would like to talk about today, guys. Um, we're about to go through a market correction. This is so obvious for so many different reasons. One is that yesterday we had some kind of a market sign or anomaly that only happens when the markets crash, like they have in the past. These particular things that occur before a market crash happens just happened yesterday. And what happened yesterday is apparently much worse than any of the market signals before a crash in the past. And one thing that was a signal is that there's a great deal, I think 160 stocks are going down, like they're falling in price rapidly. But there's something like 50 or some odd stocks that are going sharply up. There's this big discrepancy. Apparently, what happens is certain number of stocks crash and go away, and the other ones get bigger and grow and stay and save the market. And what it does is all the ignorant peasants that don't know what's going on, they've got all their money in certain things, and then they lose their money. But the rich know what's going on, and they take all their money out, which causes it to crash. The ones they don't want anymore. And the new system that they do want, they put that money into it or something. So they print a bunch of money when this happens to get out of the crisis. And then a dollar becomes worth just a penny. And you're left as a peasant holding a dollar, which is worth nothing, but a penny. And they're the ones who knew what was going on, and they've got their money in XRP. So the expectation of the people who are financial experts are saying, get your money into XRP, Bitcoin, certain Ethereum, other things like that, because that's where we're going. And maybe have some of your wealth in silver, gold, or precious metals. I think land is, property, real property is going to be the big thing. I noticed that right now, over the last several weeks, I get one commercial advertisement after the another saying, we'll buy your house, we'll give you a fair price, we'll have the whole thing finalized in 10 days. Just call this number. We want to buy your home. No matter what the condition, we want it now. And we're going to give you a fair market value. Now, I've seen that before, but I think that they're anticipating this crash. And having money in real estate is probably going to be as good as just about anything. But one easy way is just to put it in XRP, because that seems to be the system that we're going to go. However, land is something that's not going to lose its value. Gold or silver shouldn't lose its value either. Or perhaps something that we're going to be using. Maybe we're going to still have Amazon, perhaps eBay, things like that might hold up. But the entire stock market, when it crashes, all of these stocks will go way, way, way down, because everyone will be pulling their money out because of the crash, trying to get their money out. But then they're just left holding these dollars. And when the digital system goes through, they won't accept your dollar. So you just lose everything. So the only way you can keep the money, if you don't want to experience the crash, is to put it into a place that is more of a place to store your money that's not going to crash. So since we're going to a digital system, you would put your money in XRP, Bitcoin, Ethereum, different groups, different things like that is more of a storage. It has no value. It's just storing money, and it goes up because they're going to go ahead and move in that direction. So it'll go back up. The rich have got to keep their money somewhere. The billionaires, they'll pull their money out, not wanting to lose it because everything's going to crash. and they need some place to put their money. And so they're going to put it in some kind of a place like XRP or Bitcoin or something. And when the money becomes worthless, when the dollar becomes worthless because of this crash, then your dollar that you're left holding, because you pulled it out, you didn't want to experience the crash, so you still got your dollar, but now that dollar's only worth a penny. It's the value. They're going to print all this money to save the world so we don't crash completely. So they'll print all this money, or fiat money. And with all that flooding of the new money, it makes your dollar worth a lot less. And so you're losing money no matter what. Even if you're not in the stock market when it crashes. Let's say, well, I'm not in the stock market, so I've got my money, it's in the bank, I'll be fine. Or I pulled it out, it's in my mattress, right? Well, after the crash, they're going to have to print all kinds of money to get us back out of this, because they need more liquidity, as they say. So they print all this money, and now the dollar that you have is only going to be worth 10 cents. They've been doing this for years, but this is a big one. This is the biggest one that's going to happen, where they sort of reevaluate everything. And it's like they're shaking out the market and putting it from your hands to theirs. You're sitting there holding a dollar and it's not worth anything anymore. They've got their money stored somewhere like Bitcoin. And the rest of the value of everything goes down because it crashes. People lose money when it crashes, but the value of the dollar also loses money when they start printing money to get us back out of this recession. However, the rich don't lose because they're going to go to a different system. So it's a reevaluation of the value of everything. So the value of the dollar is going to be gone, but that value then will go up in a Bitcoin or something like that, because that's the system they're going to use. Once this all takes place and they devaluate your money, they transfer the wealth of the people even more into their own hands. So the people that are getting in right now on the ground floor of something like XRP, which is the new system that's going to take over, they're the ones that their money is not going to be lost, and what money they put into it, it's only going to gain by hundreds of times. It's going to go up because the wealth of the people and the dollar and all of these stock market evaluations are going to go down, and it's all going to be reevaluated. I'm not an expert on this. Don't follow what I'm saying blindly. I only suggest this could be true. Look into it and do it today, because this just happened yesterday, and everyone's saying that there's coming this transfer of wealth, whether it's going to be a collapse or just a transfer of wealth. It could be either one. They're both the same concept, but one is more severe than the other. But either way, if you keep your money and you don't lose it, say you've got $1,000 and you still got $1,000, but each of those dollars are going to be worth so much less after this goes. And so what you could have bought for $1,000 is something it's going to take $10,000 to buy now. So your $1,000, you're still losing money, you see, because they're printing all this money. This is just the fiat money that we peasants use. What the rich have is value in buildings and land and gold and silver, and they're storing money in the new system that they're creating, XRP, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so forth. That's how I understand it, but you need to look into it for yourself and do your due diligence and be very careful, friends. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that today, but it's so important that I tell you that. Secondly, I'd like to go into the I3 Atlas debacle. They're just doubling down, saying it's moved its direction. It's not a natural comet. It's coming. This has got to be part of the great psyop that's about to happen. There could be a great collapse. Thirdly, I would love to do a video today about the fact that there is riot gear being purchased by the billions and millions and just Lots of riot gear. It's going into the streets, probably in California and different places where they're going to have this showdown with ICE. I would like to point out that if this wasn't planned, Trump would have stopped the sales of these riot gear to these other side. The billionaires like Soros is buying the riot gear, giving it to the Antifa and to the cartels and whatever. And Trump's going in with the military and the National Guard, and they're going to have a showdown. It's going to be civil war. It's going to be all-out civil war in places like California and liberal states. I would say get out of there, friends, or at least have 1 foot out the door, your bags packed and ready to go. There is signs that we're about to enter into war. There's talk that we may nuke Iran. There's talk that, well, here we are trying to, shoot down the cartel and go in and get the Venezuelan cartel and so forth. While that's happening, the Russians are sending ships and the Chinese and there's submarines off the coast, and it's building up to some kind of crescendo. I believe on some particular holiday or some event that they have planned, they're going to flip the switch, a trigger. During all the chaos, the market's going to crash. Look, we're not going to be able to buy or sell when the tribulation comes. I would say whatever you can do to get some land and as many seeds, blankets, and things that you can need and get out, you should do it. However, I do want to share with you something, because this is just something I was doing today, this morning, having another one of my little talks with AI, and I want to read it to you because it's crazy, and I think you'll enjoy the conversation I had with AI. That moon right there, you can see, is pointing upward. So the sun should be shining on it from an elevation higher than the moon, way up there in the sky. But instead, it's down here. It's not up there, but it's down here. And the moon's down here, and the sun's down here, and it should be, it should be like that, And I wrote initially to AI, I said, can you entertain these thoughts, though they are opposed to the consensus? If the world was flat, when you see the moon in the sky, as it was yesterday, the angle of the reflection of the sun is wrong. The sun is over the horizon, down over the horizon. It's dusk, but it's still dusk. The moon is high, directly above, and showing a reflection angled slightly up. The sun is below the horizon or down, maybe a 20 or 30% angle downward. Is it not true that this is not caused by the fact that the moon is supposed to be 240,000 miles away, but the sun is 93 million miles? Because the apparent angle, no matter the distance, would need to line up with the line of sight. So when you look up at the moon and you look over there and there's the sun, if the sun is causing the reflection on the moon, then it should be a straight line between the moon and the sun. And that should be the side of the moon that's shining. However, when you look at that, and guys, you can go up, you're probably getting too late now because by the time I get this loaded, you won't be able to see it. But go out tomorrow if it's still, I think you can still see the moon. It won't be as good because it's going to be getting closer and closer to a full moon pretty soon. But you'll still see some sort of reflection on the moon. And you'll see that it doesn't line up with the reflection of the sun. Now, it's even more off, the apparent discrepancy. They call it the moon tilt discrepancy. It's still off no matter what you do. But it's even more off when you see the sun apparently go down over the horizon and out of sight. And yet, it's dusk. And you see the moon, and the line from the moon and the sun is completely off by, I don't know how many degrees, but quite a ways, 20, 30 degrees off. So this is what I was talking about. Now, I had asked AI about this before, and they said it's because the sun is 93 million miles away, and therefore it's a discrepancy. And now they've changed their story and they're saying something else, and I'll show you here. They're saying it that I'm right because I kind of called them on. They're like, okay, yeah, you're right. There should be a straight line between the sun and the moon. However, the reason it doesn't look like a straight line, they're saying, is because there's a dome, like an atmospheric dome, and it's reflecting or bending the light, and it makes it look like the light from the sun to the moon is bending in an arc. When in actuality, they say, if you could get up high above the earth, way up above the atmosphere, you'd see that the sun and the moon, the light is shining straight onto the moon at that exact straight line angle. But I thought, well, so you're saying that it's an illusion that we see this. Wouldn't that also be true for the flat Earth model? If what you're saying is that a globe model has a discrepancy because of an illusion, wouldn't you allow for that same illusion for flat Earth models? This is kind of the way I'm going to present this. So I'm just saying this to give an outline of what I'm discussing here, because this is a very difficult subject to discuss with just words in a conversation. It would be much easier with diagrams and charts and so forth, but since I'm just typing this question out, it may be hard for you to understand. I'm assuming that AI understands my words. If I'm accurate with my pronouns and and adjectives and so forth, they should be able to follow me. But perhaps the public wouldn't be able to follow my rambling. So I've given you an outline. So they say, based on the thought experiment you presented, the geometric observations about the angles of the sun and moon at dusk is indeed a key challenge to a flat Earth model. See how they twisted that for me. The accepted model of a spherical Earth and a distant sun and moon explains the observation as follows. The sun's light rays are essentially parallel when they reach Earth due to the immense distance of 93 million miles. The moon's phases are a result of the angle at which we view the sunlight portion, or the sunlit portion of the moon as it orbits the Earth. So the moon's phases are a result of the angle at which we view the sunlit portion of the moon as it orbits the Earth. At dusk, the sun is below the horizon for your location because of Earth's curvature. The moon, however, is high in the sky, and you can still see the sunlit portion because the sun's light coming from below the horizon is still striking the moon, because the moon is 240,000 miles up in the sky. So it's going to be high enough to go over the horizon of the Earth's curvature. But it's still striking the moon and reflecting to your position. Yeah. The challenge to the flat Earth, see, they're turning this around, because I was challenging it for the spherical Earth, but they're saying, no, this is a challenge for the flat Earth model, lies in its alternative explanations. In many flat Earth models, the sun and moon are depicted as small, local, and much closer to the Earth's surface. For the sun to appear to set, the flat Earth model relies on the principle of perspective, where the sun appears to shrink and disappear as it moves away from the observer. However, if the sun and moon are both local spotlights moving above a flat disk, a person should be able to see the sun's light source at all times from any location, even if it is far away. Okay, I used to make that claim too. However, you have to understand that it's not actually the sun that's giving us light. We are lighting up ourselves. The Earth is lighting up. We're being charged like a balloon. You rub it on your hair, it makes static electricity. So when that big object called the sun, which is the positive energy, the positive anoid, comes around and gets close to us overhead, it lights up the Earth. When we can see the sun, it lights it up. When the moon is only in the sky and the sun goes down, it's the negative anoid and it pulls energy. It's gray light. So once the sun gets further around the arc, because we're at the northern end of the arc, at the northern hemisphere, once it goes down in the other direction, far, far away from us, several thousand miles it's going around, it no longer charges the Earth particles so that light goes off. And then the light goes on in China or somewhere where it's circling over there. So I'm not concerned with that part of it because of the fact that I don't believe that the sun is literally shining light and light is going through the atmosphere like something that's going and traveling at some speed. I'll explain here in a little bit how it travels, how the light is charging, how that sun is charging the Earth when it goes over. It's not by way of light traveling. It's simply exciting the elements, heating the substance, which is air. It's in the atmosphere, the sun. Has to be. If it was in a vacuum of space, it couldn't heat the elements. It couldn't vibrate, and it wouldn't make anything light. Nothing would light up. It'd be like having a battery without a cable. It wouldn't be getting any charge. This has always been something, it's been a stickler with me. They admit that sound needs a medium. It vibrates to travel. There's no sound traveling. It's exciting through the medium. It's traveling through a medium. Has to have a medium. Can't go through a vacuum. But they say light's different, and it can. Well, that's ridiculous. It can't go through nothing, a vacuum. That is one of the principles that I am explaining, showing you, that absolutely proves that science is in error, and they know it, but they just make up stuff. Well, light travels through a vacuum. Aside from the fact you can't have a vacuum of space. Space is not even space if there's nothing in it. It's collapsed. There's nothing there. They're absolutely wrong. Light does not travel. One reason we know this is because there is no light between the sun and the Earth. It's just the blackness of space, they claim. Of course, I don't believe that. Because I don't think they've gone to space. But if you could get way above the Earth, very, very far, according to them, 93 million miles, well, they're saying that the sun is traveling 93 million miles through a vacuum of nothing, a blackness of space. There's no light out there. There's no heat. Because if there was light out there, it'd be warm. But it's cold. It's 500 degrees below zero. So it's black and cold, they say. So nothing is traveling between the sun and the Earth. It's, according to them, black. There's no light. They claim it only is light on the Earth because something invisible is traveling to the Earth, and when it gets to the Earth, boom, it reflects, and now it's light. Well, that would have to be very similar to heat, right? Heat travels. Heat is a product of light. You get a light bulb. If you have a small filament, it's light. A larger filament, it's heat. It's the same thing. It's energy. You can see it. You can feel it. So an electrical wire connected from one source, like 110, to another source, has got to be a certain thickness of wire, or the wire will burn up. It's not traveling. It's exciting the elements. It has to travel through an element, through a medium, and it's got to be excited. And therefore, the entire medium's warm or light all the way through. So if there's no medium between the sun and the Earth, that's one proof that there is no light traveling from the sun to the Earth. If you understand what I'm saying. Plus, we have another factor to factor into this. Our sight, which can be an illusion because we only see things in our immediate area as it really is. In the distance, everything converges into a point. So everything we see in the sky might not be in the place that it appears to be in the sky. It's not exactly where our eyes see it. And this is what they call light bending, but it's not light bending. It's our eyes not being able to see the peripheral all right there in our face. We have to have this ability, like chickens, I've made the point that chickens have a different cones in their eyes where they're able, kind of like bifocals, but they're able to see up close, very, very close. See, we can't see that close because we don't need to. We're not picking up bugs. We need to see quite a bit further, like an elk on the other side of the canyon, so we can shoot that elk because we're trying to eat. We got to live in an environment that's much bigger than a chicken. However, we don't need to see that sun or the moon right in front of us. It's got to be out there in a distance, and it's got to be much smaller, and it's our perspective. So that causes the illusion of things converging into a point in the great distance. And so therefore, when we see the sun going far, far away, if it were going straight over on a flat plane, it would just get smaller and smaller and smaller in the distance until it got completely out of sight. And it doesn't do that. In fact, it seems to get bigger as it gets to the horizon. And the reason for that is because it's not going east to west. We're not seeing it come up in the east and going straight overhead and down in the west. It's actually an arc, like a tetherball going around above us. And so for a lot of the time, what we're seeing, and remember, the sun's not 93 million miles away. It's only several thousand, maybe 3,000 miles or something. So we're still seeing this huge sun, 3,000 miles. It's coming, and we see the arc as it goes around. And if you look at the sun when it comes up over the horizon, it does make an apparent arc. You can't tell so much because it kind of is an illusion. It looks like it just goes overhead, over top. But you notice that it makes a kind of arc to the south and then goes around to the north. Now, a better way to get that in your mind's eye is to go out at night with a clear sky and see the Milky Way. It goes across from east to west, just like the sun and the moon and the stars. Well, it is the stars. It's a strip called the Milky Way. It's all the stars in the sky condensed into this little Milky Way strip, with a few lingering stars here and there, like the ones we see at the North Pole, the Big Dipper, and so forth. So if you're standing in a field and you're looking up at the stars and you see the Milky Way going from east to west above you, and you look north, you will see the Big Dipper. There is where you can get your bearings. That's the North Pole at the end of the Big Dipper's handle. So that's north. Now look up and you'll see that this Milky Way does go from east to west, but it doesn't go straight. It's an arc. The whole heavens goes around in an arc above us, not around us, from east to west, straight over and around the backside and then coming back up in the east like straight. No, it's an arc, like a tetherball going around above us. And you could see it with the Milky Way. It's an arc. Now they claim, yeah, it's an arc because you're looking at the Milky Way, which is a big circle, 200,000 light years across. And we're down here on Earth seeing this 200,000 mile swirl as a circle. I don't think so. So that gives you the method, or the way that your mind can understand. If you look at the stars doing that arc like a tetherball overhead, then you can imagine that if the stars are doing that, so is the moon and the sun. And if you look at them, they are. They come up in a certain point on the east horizon. When they come up, they don't go straight overhead. They kind of make an arc, but it's something you're not really aware of because it takes all day for it to go across. But then they kind of swing around and go back down in the west, but it's not really going in the west. So what you're seeing is a half of an arc. You don't see the other half. And the reason why is because the sun is not lighting the earth, but it is like a battery. And when it's close to our area, it lights up the infinite plane in our area. But as the sun goes around, because we're at the northern side of this world, we're in a different side of the earth than China or somewhere else. When it gets to their side, then it lights their side up. That's the explanation. But there's so much to this that, it's hard for me to explain all this to AI in a sentence. But again, I'm giving you a recap before I read this. So they say the observed relationship between the sun's position and the moon's phase is a significant problem for flat earth geometry. Yeah, if you didn't know what I said, this illusion that the sun and the moon and the stars are doing, if you didn't know that illusion, you would not be able to figure it out. However, they're admitting there is some kind of an illusion because the apparent reflection or the moon tilt is wrong. And this is where I'm going to go with this conversation with AI. So try to follow. They say the fact that everyone who can see the moon at a given time sees the same phase and face is inconsistent with a close local moon. It isn't because they're assuming that the sun and the moon are their own light, when in actuality the sun is a positive charge and the moon is a negative charge, and they're positively or negatively charging the earth itself. And so it's when the sun gets near us that we light up and it gets dark over there, not because the earth comes into a direct barrier or wall stopping the light from the sun getting to us. You see, so when they're seeing the reflected light of the moon from the sun, they're thinking that the sun's light's traveling from the sun to the moon, and then there's this angle. But what is really going on is we're looking at the moon and it's not where it should be in the sky, or we're looking at the sun and the sun is not really actually over the horizon. That's an illusion. And proof of that is that the reflection on the moon from the sun is at a tilted discrepancy. It's not accurate. And that then is an illusion, and you've got to explain the illusion. And if there is such an illusion, either the light bends or that they're not in the positions that we believe they're in. You see? So this whole discussion is me trying to get AI to just humor me and go with my theory and tell me what would then be the result. However, as you'll see, we argue about it for a while and then just give up and leave. Because when I say something to them that is correct and they go, whoa, he's right, it's just like I said the other day, people who say, give me an answer, and if you can't give me the right answer, say Apple. Well, that's what they're doing when they don't talk to me. That's their Apple. AI and I have a little thing, a little unsaid agreement. We haven't said we're going to do this. I didn't ask him to do this, but basically, this is how they let me know that I'm right, and they stop talking. And you'll see that as we go. So they keep saying the fact that everyone who can see the moon at a given time sees the same phase and face is inconsistent with a close local moon, where different observers would have different viewing angles. Your observation about the inconsistent angle reinforces this, as the moon's illumination angle would need to perfectly align with the distant sun that is set, which is not easily explained by a small nearby sun or a flat plane. Okay. It does make sense when they say it that way, except for they're not describing the facts as they are. And they're not explaining their own illusion and discrepancy in their model. And they just explain, well, it's an illusion. That's just an illusion, guy. Right? It's reflection and refraction and so forth. It's an illusion. But that same illusion could also be factored into the flat earth model, as I will show you. So I say, so if the moon's sun reflection is off from the apparent position of the sun, why would this be? I know the sun is much further away than it. That is why it still illuminates the moon on that side of the sun. But even if the sun was 93 million miles away, wouldn't the moon and sun still need to have a straight line of sunlight at the point the moon faces the sun? The apparent reflection angle is wrong, both for its up and down angle, but also for its left and right angle. That's another thing that you got to think about. When you look at the moon, you see a discrepancy in the angle of the sun. It's not only discrepant up and down, like the moon is angled upward from where the sun is, but it's also angled away left, not just up, but left and up. See, because there's an illusion both up and down. Because when you look into the distance, you see everything converges into a point, like a cone vision. And so everything on your left side is going to converge to the right, and everything from the top is going to converge to the bottom. And everything from the right is going to converge to the left. And everything from the bottom is going to converge to the top. And everything's going to converge in the middle. So there's going to be a convergence. If you're standing on the Earth looking at the sun, and the sun is to your left, and the moon is to your left, then you're going to see the discrepancy more to the right, because it's going to appear the angle is more to the right than it actually is, because of the fact that your left side is going to be going towards the right. I hope that makes some kind of sense. Nothing is clear at this point because we do not know all these facts that we should know to understand what the universe we live in really is. But we're trying to surmise it. So they say, well, you are correct that in any geometric model, the illuminated part of the moon must be facing the sun along the line of sight from the moon's surface. Your observation that the apparent angle seems wrong is a known optical illusion when viewing the sky as a flat two-dimensional dome. Here is an explanation of why this happens in the context of the spherical Earth model, which accounts for the vast distances and why it presents a significant problem for a flat Earth model. The observation is explained by a combination of the Earth's curvature, the sun's vast distance, and how our brain perceives angles in the sky. Pretty complicated. They're going to try and throw at me a bunch of these things that I can't prove and you can't prove and say that's the reason, period. There it is. And then I'm going to say, if there's an illusion, couldn't that figure into the flat Earth discrepancy as well? And they're not figuring that in. Like, there can't be any discrepancies with a flat Earth model, right? But if there is a discrepancy with their model, well, they say it's in some kind of an illusion, or it's the way your mind or your eyes are seeing it. It's not real, you see? So they say parallel light rays. Because the sun is 93 million miles away, its light rays arrive at the Earth and the moon in essentially parallel lines. The difference in angle from one side of the Earth to the other is negligible, about 1.9 degrees, as seen from the moon's perspective. The Earth's curvature. At dusk, the sun is below the horizon from your vantage point due to the Earth's curvature. The moon is high in the sky. The sunlight that illuminates the moon is coming from below your horizon line over the curvature of the Earth. The line of sight, the core of your point, is correct. The straight line must connect the sunlit part of the moon to the sun's position. In the spherical model, this line is an arc in your visual field across the dome of the sky. Our eyes and brain, however, tend to interpret the sky as a flatter, two-dimensional surface and try to draw a straight line between the sun and the moon. And this creates the illusion that the angle is wrong. If you trace the great circle, the shortest distance across the curved sky, from the illuminated part of the moon to the sun's actual position, you will find it aligns perfectly. So what they're saying is that I'm right, there is a discrepancy in the angle, but it's due to the fact that when the sun goes through our atmosphere, it arcs. See? And so it is a spherical model, and the line is in an arc in your visual field across the dome of the sky. And then they're saying you're trying to look at something in a two-dimensional way, but it's really three-dimensional or something. So you see that they're saying that this discrepancy that I'm pointing out is real, but it's an illusion. It's a bending of light. That's their explanation. So they say your observation about the incorrect angle highlights a major inconsistency for a flat Earth model with a local sun and moon. The local angles. In most flat Earth models, the sun is much closer, like 3,000 miles high, and moves in a circle above the disk. If this were the case, the sun's light rays would diverge significantly, and the angles of shadows and the moon's illumination would change drastically depending on an observer's location and the sun's position. Unless, of course, there's some kind of an illusion going on, right? That there's something that our eyes isn't seeing. Both models have an illusion, perhaps. The only model that makes this consistent is a spherical Earth with a distant moon that always shows the same tidally locked face to Earth. A local moon and a flat Earth model would appear with different phases, orientations, and sizes to different observers at the same time, which is not what is observed. The only problem is they're fooling you there a little bit. They're making you think that, well, the moon is up in the sky and the sun's up in the sky, and all these people are all different places around the Earth and they're all seeing the same thing. No, people in China are not looking up into the night sky and seeing the moon the same way I'm seeing it. They're in the daytime. Okay? And the only people that's seeing that moon right where it is the people in my local area. And therefore, we're all going to see it the same because we're all local. You see? And so another area 1,000 miles away might see it differently when the moon gets to them because it's going across and it's going to be straight up for me, but it hadn't got to them yet. So, of course, they're going to see the moon differently because they're 1,000 miles from me. And they do. So they're not being honest there. It's not true what they say here that everyone who can see the moon at the same time, at the same time, we're all here in the same area and at the same time, sees the exact same phase and the exact same face, right? And that's true, whether it's, even if you're on a flat plane. And they say, but the only model that makes sense is the spherical Earth, because they say a local moon and a flat Earth model would appear with different phases, orientations, and sizes to different observers at the same time, which is not what is observed. Well, they're cheating. They're actually twisting words here, because a local moon doesn't mean that the moon's only in New Mexico. People in New Mexico can see the moon, and people in California can see the moon, but we're 1,000 miles away from each other. And so we're not local, and the sun's not local, and the moon's not local in that sense, even on a flat Earth. They're trying to make it sound like if we're on a flat Earth, then for people in China and for the people in America, the moon and the sun is just local, and the sun should shine on us over here in New Mexico exactly the same way and as it would on people in China, because it's up in the sky and we're on a flat plane. However, as I'm trying to point out to you, that the sun is going in a vast arc like a tetherball. We're at the northern end of that arc, and it's closer to us. And when it reaches a certain distance or closeness, it charges the Earth, and the Earth lights up. And they're not understanding this part. So, in short, your observation about the apparent angular discrepancy, while an optical illusion when viewed on a 2D mental perception of the skies, actually powerful evidence for the 3D geometry of the spherical Earth and distant celestial bodies. The apparent angle, when correctly traced along the arc of the sky's dome, aligns perfectly with the spherical model and cannot be reconciled with the flat Earth geometry. So they're saying something that would be a hard thing for normal people to figure. We know a little math, but most of us are not going to be able to figure out what would be the correct angle for that reflection if you're going to say it's being reflected wrong because of this dome, which is refracting the light or something. And you would never know if they're right or wrong about what they're saying. I don't know, but I can imagine if there is a dome over the Earth, that there would be discrepancies. You see a concave lens or a convex lens, and it changes things dramatically. In fact, they say that we could see the stars because we have a convex lens over us so that we can focus in and the stars actually look brighter. Well, not only would they look brighter, but they might change their appearance in the sky. We might be seeing them above us, but they might literally be on the horizon. You see what I'm saying? Now, nobody really knows, because unless we know the exact math, we wouldn't be able to figure this out, which is why I'm trying to get AI to just humor me and give me the math, but they won't do it. So I say, are you saying that the sun's light does not travel straight to the moon, but follows an arc? And they're saying, no, I'm not saying that the sun's light travels in an arc through space. Light travels in a straight line through the vacuum of space. How could light or sound or anything travel through nothing? A vacuum is nothing. That alone shows their ignorance, because if the space is a vacuum, right? If it's just a vacuum, meaning that there's nothing there, then something like light cannot travel through nothing. You see, there cannot be a nothing between us and the sun. And we can measure that nothing and say, oh, that's 500,000 miles of nothing. See, so they're wrong about that. But anyway, the arc, they call themselves an AI, was referring to is the apparent path in your line of sight across the dome of the sky as you perceive it from your vantage point on the curved surface of the earth. Here is the clarification. Light in space, straight line. The path of light from the sun's surface to the moon's surface is a straight line, as light travels in the straightest possible path. First of all, sunlight does not travel. Okay, electricity doesn't travel through a cord. It vibrates, and this is why the cord can get hot or warm, and that's why sometimes you got to get a thicker gauge of wire so it can handle the heat that you're going to be running through it. 110. You've got a 220, you got to have a bigger cable because it's vibrating. It's causing friction and heat. It's not traveling, it's charging. And therefore, you can put that wire on a battery, and then it'll charge the battery and take it off, and now the electrical charge is in the battery. And that's what's happening with the Earth. When it's lit up, it's charged. And it gets statically charged when that big object that we call the sun gets near us. And it appears to be lit up because it's in contact with something. Its vibrationary energy is now charging, and it looks light, and we look light because we're charged, both of us. However, when the sun goes further away from us, that line of charge, that wire is broken, and everything gets dark here. Now it's going over there in China, and they're lighting up. So then it says the light in the atmosphere, straight line. Light rays from the sun to your eye are also essentially straight lines, with only mirror bending refraction as they pass through the atmosphere. 3, the apparent arc in your vision, the illusion, the apparent discrepancy in the angle of the moon's reflection, and that you observe is an optical illusion caused by the geometry of you standing on a sphere, trying to map a 3-dimensional distant relationship onto a flat 2-dimensional mental image of the sky. So they're admitting there that the Earth apparently feels like a flat plane, and you're interpreting it as a flat plane, but it's not. It's an illusion, see? And though the sky looks like an infinite blue, it's an illusion. It's really a big dome. Okay, well, we kind of agree on one thing then. To put it simply, the physical light travels straight. Your perception of the angle across the visible dome of the sky is what needs to be traced as an arc or a great circle to align the actual position of the sun with the illuminated part of the moon. None of this actually makes sense to me. Because if we had an atmosphere, it's full of air. It isn't just a glass dome. There's air from the top of the glass dome, or if there were glass up there, From the top of this arc or dome, there's atmosphere all the way down. In fact, the closer you get to the Earth, the more atmosphere there is. And it would seem like that if the light was going to come through this atmosphere, it wouldn't bend, but it would just diffuse. So I'm not sure I'm following what they're saying, that the light would have to bend because of a dome. It might, but it would refract in various ways. If you look at what happens when it's raining and it stops raining and there's mist, a lot of moisture in the air. When the sun shines through it, what we get is a rainbow arc with the 7 colors. So the refraction is the different colors. And they're making these 7 colors in the rainbow, and they're making it look like a dome. However, it's not the light shining from one end of the arc to the other and making this arc. It's a straight line of light coming and then diffusing into this arc. And it's making the various layers of color, which is the diffusion. But it wouldn't, therefore, mean that it would cast a shadow, or it would make somehow the reflection in the wrong place. You see, they're using vague words and explanations that we cannot verify that make it sound like they know what they're talking about, but it is not scientifically accurate to say that light going through a diffused dome of air is going to arc and shine and make a reflection in the wrong place. That's not, I don't believe, scientifically true. But they go on to say the actual straight line geometry works out perfectly in the spherical Earth model. I don't think so. But it feels wrong to an observer because of how the human brain processes the vast distances and the curved perspective. Now, you see, I could say the same thing. If you're a flat earther and you say, well, how could it be that we're seeing the sun and they're not seeing it in China? Well, that's because you don't understand this whole procedure that I've been explaining. And what if there is some illusions involved? There obviously is, because when we look at the moon and we see the reflection of the sun, it's off by some degrees. So there is some kind of a illusion, some kind of a bending, or some kind of and it's what I've said, is that light goes into it converges into a center ahead of you. It might be 1,000 miles from one mountain to another mountain. But when I look in the distance, they look like they're about an inch apart. So it's an illusion, right? So the arc I mentioned in the previous explanation is the apparent path the light seems to take across your dome-shaped visual field when you look at the sky. Light is straight in space, our perspective is curvy, and the illusion. Okay, that's what they're saying. So I go on to counter by saying, so your explanation of the apparent discrepancy in the moon, tilt, reflection, is that it's really around Earth because our eyes see it as an arc. But that arc is not seen at the proper angle. It appears off. But it does show an apparent sun direction, almost looking like it's shining from a sun going down around a spherical Earth, just off by some few degrees. This means we have two things. One, the Earth is actually a sphere because it looks as if it's a sphere. So we believe it is because we see the moon tilt discrepancy. However, the fact that it is off by some degrees because of the moon tilt discrepancy, what degree is that off by? I wish they would have answered that. So if the Earth was flat, the sun would reflect off the moon apparently tilted from its actual straight, flat reality. For the same reason it would if it was a sphere. In both cases, there is an illusion because whether it is flat or a sphere, we have an apparent moon tilt discrepancy. And what would be the greater illusion? From the flat Earth plane, one would see an apparent discrepancy in the actual angle we see on the moon. We should see the moon reflecting light straight line to the sun, which would obviously, on a flat Earth, not change any up or down angle, only a left or right angle as the moon waxes and wanes by some degrees. Last night I saw the moon reflected sunlight change its angle up to down by several degrees, perhaps due to the reality of the sun and moon going overhead in an arc, like standing under a giant tetherball swing around a pole. the flat Earth would not move, and the moon's face doesn't change with respect to Earth's flat side. But the sun is going at a different speed or perhaps a different plane above and or other variations that might explain the moon tilt discrepancy. The illusion might be that when we look up at the sun, moon, stars, and planets, they all go from east to west, and we would only see them from the flat ground overhead in the arc they appear to trace, in the arc that they appear to travel, but do not see that they do not go around a sphere, but they go around a flat plane as a tetherball above in the right clockwise motion. The Milky Way stream also appears not straight overhead from east to west, but as an arc like a horseshoe. The sun actually does this too, not a straight line east to west, but as a half arc or horseshoe arc from east to west flow. We explain the apparent dense star stream Milky Way as the arm of a flat disk stream of stars in the swirling vortex or galaxy arms. If the stream of stars are not a galaxy 200,000 light years across, but a mass of stars or lights, maybe like our moon or sun, both are apparently the same size, one being positive energy, the other negative flow causing gray light. If we see them as something the size as our moon, but not straight up going across east to west, but only apparently in a stream above, but actually the moon or the planets or the stars or the objects like that are all only a few thousand miles in the air, each orbiting a certain area beyond the poles in the distance over a flat infinite plane. Then the appearance of these stars being straight up overhead is because of the same phenomenon we see with the moon's tilt discrepancy. The angles are off because the ozone atmosphere dome reflects light in an arc, or everything always converges into a point in the distance. But either way, there is a discrepancy of the angles on the moon from the sun, and the theory of a sphere, Earth, would also have this discrepancy of some degrees. I know you will say this is all wrong, but this just shows that both models have apparent discrepancies. Humor me for an experimental exercise, please. Which theories, the flat Earth or the globe, using only the points I made, not the supposed evidence from NASA with satellite pictures or the proven falsehood we went to the moon, but with only empirical evidence of our eyesight, which angle discrepancy is further off? Boy, I can't spell when I'm doing this. I'm just going so fast I don't spell anything right. The question you're asking, which angle discrepancy is further off between the flat Earth and the spherical Earth models, is based on a false premise. The spherical Earth model using standard geometry has no discrepancy in the sun's reflection angle on the moon when accounting for the distance and the observer's position on a curved surface. The perceived discrepancy is an optical illusion, but not a flaw in the model's geometry. The flat Earth model, however, has a fundamental geometric discrepancy that cannot be reconciled with your own observations. But I ask, finally, I had explained that the Earth being flat would not affect the illusion of the moon tilt, apparently up and down angle discrepancy, because, like your theory suggests, there is an illusion. You allow for this illusion in your model, but not a flat Earth model. You assert that the discrepancy on the globe model is an illusion due to eyes tricking us. If you look at my prior question before this one, I show the method by which your illusion or another is causing the illusion. Boy, not a very good paragraph there. But here we got the apple. They're saying you win. They don't have an answer for that. They just go, here are the top results. They stop arguing with me and trying to explain this with me. And now some of you might think it's just because I'm so stupid and they just can't deal with my stupidity. However, I've been debating AI for a while, and whenever I get to a place that they can't refute what I'm saying, they stop talking. Or when they get to a place that they cannot say the truth. And perhaps they were at that point where they were about to say, yes, there is a discrepancy in both models. And they couldn't say that to me in writing. But anyway, guys, I mean, it's late and it's dark, and I got to try to get this loaded before it gets too dark. I'm going to leave it here. Lord will bless you. You know He loves everybody. His grace and His peace will be with you guys, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one, guys.